All right, everybody, welcome to this week's Corn Belt Umpires Zoom Lunch Clinic. My name is Jake Samp. I'm joined with Connor Singheisen today, and today we are going to be talking about a fantastic topic and one that is very, we'll say, close to my heart. That is mentorship and working with new umpires. As most of you hopefully are aware, at the end of last season, I resigned as the director of operations for the Corn Belt Umpires Association and became the director of umpire development. Part of my job with in that new position is to organize and operate a mentorship program for our mentor or for our umpires. So part of what we're going to talk about today is what that mentorship program looks like. Um, I realize that we're going to have a far more in-depth conversation about that at the February 21st meeting. Is that the right date? I don't have a calendar right for me. I think it's the Wednesday after President's Day. We'll have our tailgaters meeting, um, and that will be a topic of discussion because that is new association business. I have worked with a couple other guys to come up with a mentorship program that I think will be quite beneficial. But in addition to talking about our mentorship program today, we want to talk about working with new guys and just kind of how to approach that situation, but also maybe working with somebody that has some less experience than you do. And so, as always, if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. Uh, Otherwise, for some of you who got here late, we will have a Major League umpire here next week. As of right now, we're not recording that video, so I would plan on being here at noon. If you have questions or discussion points that you would like us to talk about, please drop them in a chat or send them to either Connor or myself. That way we can prepare our special guest next week. We will be talking about handling situations, which is always a hot topic and uh, one of my favorite topics to sit and discuss. So, as always, if you have to eat or do something like that, that's always fine. If you got questions, don't hesitate to just unmute. Um, so, without further ado, let's talk about why we need mentorship. Um, I don't know about you guys, but I got into this 15 years ago, at least, and I'm 27. So I got 15 years in already. Um, I will say this, my days of working summer baseball, a lot like where I'm working a lot of games, those days are quite numbered. I graduate from grad school and I get my big boy job in the fall. So my summer availability is going to diminish a lot, which means there's more games opening up. And as people have families, they get married, other obligations come up, and we're not able to umpire as much. And there's more games than ever. We got umpires that are getting older and retiring, and we got younger umpires that are getting married and having families. That means there's less. They have less opportunity to work. So we need to find replacements for these umpires. With that being said, we want to make sure that as experienced umpires or as umpires that have a passion and a desire for the game, kind of like what Connor was alluding to before we started the meeting, we want to make sure that that information and that passion is communicated to the next generation of umpires. Some of these things can be, situation handling, ironically, a topic for the next 3 weeks. Effective communication. That's always a fantastic discussion topic and one that we try to loop in whenever possible. Rule knowledge and application. I will not name this umpire, but there was an umpire who asked me arguably the hardest question that I've been asked in my umpiring career. And it wasn't until I figured out the answer to that question that he would talk to me at the bar. Um, not game related. So being able, and it's thankfully a situation I've never had happen, but I'm ready for it if that day ever comes. And then just game management. How do we umpire? How do we do what we do? Um, there, I understand that the Wendell State Umpire School exists. I understand that minor league development has its own uh, camp system, but for most of us, there is no school to go to be an umpire. And we have these clinics. We had a clinic like the one we put on last week or this past weekend in Sioux Center, um, among other things. That is how we get better at a grassroots level. And so that uh, the knowledge of the umpires that have been around for a while, passing that on to the next generation is so critical and so valuable. And lastly, some people might argue with me on this, but I will firmly say that there is a correlation between competent umpiring and a better quality game. Um, Kids have more fun playing, they stick around longer, and the game is better for it. Connor, am I missing anything, you think?
Chris, I know you're new here, but I want to ask you a couple questions because nobody here knows you. How did you get started in umpiring?
So probably as most everyone does, they do little league baseball, and then you figure out probably really quickly that you're not good enough to be your college level, and so you want to stay around the game. So you check into umpiring. Did that from like 16 till I was about 20-ish. Went to college, got a master's degree in education, and then right after that, I went to Wendell State Umpire School and did that kind of stuff. Went into professional baseball for 4 years and got out in 2019. Then came back to Illinois and then moved over here to Sioux City and just been working CBUA from that time. Did I answer the
So,
question?
yeah. So, how did you get from somebody who finished playing baseball to umpiring baseball to being able to go to pro school?
Um,
Like, what was the one core thing that made you be able to go to pro school and get a job?
it was definitely I had a lot of mentors around, especially the high school level when I first started out. If anybody's from the East Coast or knows of East Coast officiating, you have a lot of the ACC and SEC umpires where where I lived about. They took a hold of me and another guy and really drilled into us the basics, fundamentals, timing, use of eye, stuff like that. I can't thank those guys enough for all the knowledge they gave me and spreading it. And then I've been able to also give it to the next generation as well.
So here we have somebody who was not very good at baseball, apparently, is what he said, right? If self-admittedly. Developed an interest in umpiring, developed a care and desire to improve, and somebody latched onto that and helped get him to where he is now. And he has in turn passed it forward. Like we do with any trade, any craft, any skill. You find people that are interested in doing a good job. People will find you and help you get to where you want to be. And that's why mentorship is so important. Because if we don't continue to find the umpires that are interested in getting better, help them get through that line graph that goes like this of how good you are, how good you start, how good you think you are, how good you actually are, how good you become. If we don't get them through that progression, baseball's not going to be around for forever. Because umpires aren't going to be there. I can talk about probably 50 or 60 people that helped get me to where I am today. Some great, some not great. But they taught me lessons along the way to get me to the point where I can sit here and speak intelligently on umpiring. They opened doors of opportunities and let me know what the opportunities and potentials could be if I put the effort in. And somebody's willing to do that for me free of charge, which is why I sit here today talking to all of you, trying to help those of you that are interested in getting better, be the best umpire you can be at the level you're at. And then if there's a higher level you want to get to, if I can't get you there, odds are I have enough contacts built up that I can find somebody that can speak intelligently enough to get you where you want to go if you're willing to put the work in. The average age of officials in South Dakota is 55 years old. I've been umpiring baseball. This will be my 20th season. I'm 20 years below the average age of an official in South Dakota. And I think that in enough, that's fact right there. That at 35, I'm 20 years below the average. Should tell you why mentorship is so important. But also, because when I walk onto a high school baseball field, a Legion baseball field, a college baseball field, I want to know that the people that I'm working with are competent, are going to do a good job, and are going to have fun. Mentorship doesn't just go from the most experienced umpire down. I think there's going to be a quote somewhere here in a little bit that Jake's going to talk about. But we continue to learn from each other regardless of the amount of experience we have. There is not a single person I've worked with that I have not learned something about umpiring from, whether it's the way they do something, whether it's the way they phrase a conversation with a coach, whether it's a flair and a mechanic or a positioning. And you talk through these situations, you ask questions and challenge each other's thought processes. And that's how we learn and improve and get better. And that's how we make the game better and make umpiring in a better situation.
Connor, you're absolutely right. I mean, I'm 23 years, no, more than that. I suck at math. So I'm, I get far more, 28 years, I think, if I'm doing the math right, below the average age of the umpire in South Dakota or an official in South Dakota. And I mean, the one thing that I will harp on, and I don't know if I really put this in here, is if I don't know what your goal is, I can't help you. And so, I mean, I can sit and tell you in a post game, yeah, I think you're missing that low pitch because your head's too low. Okay. So, but if I don't, but then, I can take that a step further if I know, like, hey, I want, this person wants to get to the college level, or, this person wants to say, I want to work the South Dakota amateur state tournament, or whatever. So, let's talk briefly about kind of what we're doing here as far as mentorship is concerned. So we're rolling out a mentorship program this year. It's going to consist of 4 phases. 3 of them are directly related to the Corn Belt Umpires Association. The 4th one is a little different. So basically, we're putting new umpires in this first phase. Then we had umpires that are moving up. Where they're in that 3 to 5 year window. When we talk about umpiring from a strategic planning standpoint, if I can get an umpire from their first year to their second year, I only have about a 25% chance of retaining them through 10 years. If I get them to that second to third year, it only goes up about 10% to about 35%. If I can get that umpire from that third year to that fourth year, I'm looking at about a 75 to 80% retention rate through 10 years. And that's why mentorship is important, because you have somebody there to help them along and keep them focused. I mean, I tell the story all the time. I got done umpiring. I went and was a UIC at a local park for a year, and I said, screw it, I'm done umpiring. And one of my buddies to this day, who I give credit to for saving my umpiring career, he's like, hey, what are you doing tonight? I said, I'm nothing. And he's like, great. He's like, are you planning on umpiring baseball this summer? I said, no, I'm done. He's like, no, you're not. You are not done. You are going to the Morningside Community Center, and you will be there at 7:00 for the umpire meeting. And basically, I got drugged to the Morningside Community Center in Sioux Falls for a meeting, and now I'm sitting here today because one of my mentors cared enough to be like, you're not quitting. Um, and I'm here today. And when one thing about mentorship, and I might have put it in here, I might not have, celebrate the big stuff, but also celebrate the little stuff. So like when I got hired into college baseball, and then when I got hired into the Division II level, there were certain people that I wanted to celebrate with me in my accomplishments. And the individual that I would say saved my umpiring career, he was at the top of that list as far as who I sent messages to. That third phase, we got guys that are going to want to work postseason baseball. This is where we really put the polish on and get umpires ready to work postseason, or if they have a desire to work at the college level, we can get them in with some of our college umpires at the phase 3 level. And then this last phase, which, like I said, it's kind of a weird phase of sorts, but we have a lot of new college umpires within our group. And so what we've gotten together to do is we've gone in and we've taken some of the highest level college umpires within our organization, and we've created a mentorship within just the college ranks alone. And so if you desire to work college baseball, you desire to move up, please make sure you communicate that with myself. Make sure you communicate that to Connor. Communicate that to Mark as well, because we're focusing on mentorship focused assigning. There is no reason that I should be working a 16U game with Mr. Singhisen. That doesn't serve the game of baseball well. If Mr. Singhisen and I, say Connor goes to Harrisburg to do a junior legion game, and I go to 307 to do a 16U game, and we both take a less experienced umpire with us, that's now two umpires that are getting good feedback, that are working with someone that's more experienced, and that's making them a better umpire, as opposed to just sticking, two experienced umpires together on a 16U or a junior legion game. It's a more effective resource allocation, I guess, if you want to speak businessy about it. As I put on their mentor coordinator, hi, I'm Jake. I'm the director of umpire development, and I'm the mentor coordinator. If you got questions about the mentorship program, let me know. And then doing these trainings, we had a unbelievably successful clinic this past weekend. We had 19 total people attend. Hopefully everybody took something away. If they didn't take something away from that clinic, that's their own problem, because I had fantastic instructors. I mean, I got a text message late Saturday night after the clinic from one of the guys who was instructing. It's like, we need to do a weekend next year. So we're already planning, and we're going big with this one. It was fantastic. I could not have been more happy with how it went. But we're going to do more of these. We're going to put on some evaluation opportunities. We're trying to make umpiring better. And then obviously, today's Zoom videos. We have a lot of fun with them. And hopefully everybody gets something out of it. So let's talk about how we mentor. How you initially communicate with your partner, whether it's, I have never worked with Chris. I look forward to the day that I get to step on the field with Chris. And the way that I send Chris a message and say, hey, we're working together today. And the way that I communicate with Chris is going to be the same way that I communicate with somebody for any other game. And I would hope that the way that I communicate with Chris, the information that I provide and all that stuff, is going to communicate, okay, Jake knows what he's doing. Jake's got it figured out. When you're in your pregame, talk baseball. I think it was last year, we did an entire clinic on how do you have an effective pregame. And I keep meaning to do a video and I've done one, and the sound quality wasn't very good. So I'm trying to figure out how to do a video where we can sit and talk about what does an effective pregame look like. Because an effective pregame, especially with someone that's new, can reduce anxiety, and it gets them more comfortable and confident to walk on the baseball field with you. Make them feel comfortable. Encourage them to ask questions. The only stupid question is the one that you don't ask, because you're going to find and run into situations where, oh crap, I really wish I would have asked this question. Like I had one 2 years ago. And I mean, this is one of those fully transparent, hi, I'm Jake, I ask stupid questions, because I don't want it to come back and bite me. But I straight up called Connor, and I wish Jason was here because he was in on this. It was over something. It was over a base award, and it was, the right fielder in this situation. He didn't intentionally put the ball out of play. He misfielded it and it went out of play. It wasn't anything intentional. But the coach comes out and he's sitting here and he's arguing with me. And 3 innings later, as hard as you try, you don't want to let what the coach said affect you. But you're still sitting there going, "Is that really? Did I get that right?" And I called Connor up and I said, "Hey, dumb question." I ran through the scenario. He's like, "You got it right." And I promise you, Connor doesn't think anything less of me as an umpire because I asked a stupid question. That is, I want to make sure that I got this right, and B, if I got it wrong, I don't do it again. One thing that I love to ask when I'm working with newer umpires: what's your umpiring experience? What's your comfort level? Do they want to take the first plate, or do they want me to take the first plate? I'm working with somebody and it's not necessarily the first time, but I'll still ask it if it's the first time. You want to work on something? What concerns do you have about the game? During the game, small pieces of feedback. One thing with that is, if you're going to give feedback during the game, make it big. For example, partners on the plate, or the mentees on the plate, and they are not in the slot. I mean, they're not even in the same zip code as a slot. That's a safety issue. Go fix that. A signaling issue with their strike mechanic. That's an after the game discussion for me, because number one, I'm probably going to have to demonstrate it, which is going to make my partner look bad. And we're going to have to work through it. And two, that's just something that's so small. They need to focus on ball strike, safe out. There's something called the feedback sandwich. Good, bad, good. When possible, do it. And then follow up, encourage follow up. Hey, if you think about something and it comes up tomorrow, shoot me a text. Let's talk about it. And then, if you build a really good rapport with them, follow up with them, see how their season's going. Check in with them once a week. You got any weird stuff that's happened? Connor, any other things?
Yeah, I've got two. I'm gonna keep it short and sweet. Number one, sometimes there are some guys that can walk on the field and turn it on automatically. When you are working with a new umpire, don't be that person. Just because you can walk out and umpire a 16-under baseball game with your eyes closed doesn't mean that they can. Use your experience to set them up and prepare them to walk onto the field that day. And I think that's the biggest thing. And if you are in a situation where your partner wants to just walk on the field and turn it on, but you're a person that needs to prepare and talk through situations, that's me a lot of times. Lead your own pregame with yourself if they don't want to listen. Ideally, you start talking and they'll start listening and they'll start engaging with you. But have a sheet prepared. I do the same thing. I don't have one. Yeah, I do actually. So I do one with all my student staff for basketball. I have a double-sided laminated sheet that everybody gets with a pregame. Everything they need to cover in order to be ready to officiate that game. If I work with Jake 17 times in a season, I'm still going to pull that out, and I'm going to talk about 3 things on that, and then I'm going to talk about 7 things that have happened in the course of the season. But when you're working with somebody who is very green, take the time to show them the right way and make sure they prepare for the game. Because then you in turn know exactly what they're doing. So that's number one. Number two, the feedback that you give them in game should be tailored to that game. And what I mean by that is if it is a game where they are struggling to call balls and strikes, you don't need to be talking about rotations. You need to talk about what makes that game better and what helps them get through that game. You can cover all that stuff after. If it's a very laid back game and they're doing great balls and strikes mechanics, and you want to go down and say, hey, I want you to switch up your strike mechanic, that's fine. You can do that. But know what the game needs that day and what that individual game needs, and make sure your feedback makes that game better. And that's what I would say about that. So we're good.
Don't give feedback for feedback's sake. Like, you could sit and say, yeah, I mean, here's the one thing I got, but make it worthwhile. Don't nitpick. And I think that's on the next slide, actually. So when we're on the field, this is fantastic. So I love, like, if anybody knows me, I am a first plate kind of guy. I like doing my plate, getting that out of the way, and then I like pulling pillows game two. That's my personal preference. But if I'm working with a new umpire, shoot, give me the second stick. Absolutely. Because then I get to see them do a plate meeting. And if it's something where they're not super comfortable, then I'll take the first plate and they can see, how I run the plate meeting. Provide feedback at appropriate times. Some people like when if I'm doing a, junior legion game or something like that, yeah, I come down between every inning and let me know what you see. Dan, you want to take this bullet point here that is underlined partially? Because this is you. I took this from this weekend, and
first and foremost, certain corrections, certain things that have to be put correct. Number one, we don't call it what did you call it, a sandwich? It's an Oreo. Feedback is provided as an Oreo, so people can actually picture it and stays in their mind. You're mutt. In other words, something positive, something where the critique is a little bit more challenging, and then finish on a positive note. The other thing I want to say, there's a guy on here that has challenged me exactly as Jake and Connor were talking about, and that's my assigner, Chad Ishins. We were joking back and forth. We had a meeting on an unrelated issue, and I said, hey, what do you got me doing working with this guy? And Chad got real quiet and said, I need you to teach him. I need you to pick him up. And it absolutely energized the back end of my schedule. I got about 3 or 4 games late April, early May, and I'm really looking forward to them now because they'll have had maybe 20 games. They'll have had an opportunity to work at the college level, and I'll be able, instead of doing sort of the build-up, do some sandpapering, some finishing, and I'm really looking forward to it. The point that Jake, and the other thing I wanted to chew Jake's ass for is he says, hey, we put on this clinic, and then immediately starts praising himself. That's really great. That's really, no. It was remarkable. All we need is some more bodies in there, but it was a good facility. It was good interaction. We had people at every level of getting ready to work high school and potentially work college. Which is great because you can grab a guy's question that other guys think they know the answer to and watch their faces as they realize they didn't really know the answer, and they get a little bit more information from a Russell Lundquist. They get more information from Connor. They get information from guys that they want to be when they grow up. It's kind of a big deal. The other thing I want to point out is Silvestri is only here because he and I now have 5 games together. He's my chief in all of them. I'm planning on riding him like a wagon on his shoulders. Neither here nor there. But and Jake wants to talk about a quote that I used in the clinic that I got from Jeff Hendricks. And this is the first time I was down in Springfield and that he was there. It's my second year in Springfield. It's 2016, I believe. And the quote is, when I walk on the field, and I'll do this with Mr. Silvestri, I either see a peer or I just got a mentor. And every time I'm on the field, if it isn't a peer that's with me, I'm the mentor. And Jeff has literally checked in back with me. He's called me and said, what do you have? That is Zeus. That is literally the most decorated umpire in my time. Perry Costello's right there with him. Steve Burleson is with him. but nobody's above Jeff Hendricks. But that fool is calling me. I don't deserve that. That's ridiculous. But he wants to know what I'm getting. He wants to know, am I excited about this assignment? Where am I going to be? That's going to be the weirdest. What coaches am I going to see? I don't deserve that. I got Angel Campos. I got Jeff Hendricks. I got Jeff Macias. I got Chad Eichens. I got Terry Helgett. The bad news for all you guys is in this region, the bad news is there are a mountain of incredibly talented World Series, in many cases, decorated officials that are in front of you. But the good news is we don't have very far to go. There's not a ton of D1. So you're going to see them. They're going to work D3. They're going to work junior college. I work a ton of it. I work everyone that I get offered. I work high school now because it's an opportunity for me to give back for all the people that have lifted me up. And there's an army of, I'm telling you, I'm not name dropping. I'm saying you get to see them. You get to work with Connor Singheiser. Connor's weird. He's bizarre. But man, can he work. All right? When Connor calls a strike, the two coaches go, yeah. You just don't see that, okay? You don't get the kind of barking, or if they do, it's because they're wrong. And you know that going in. And there's nothing like Aaron Christians. There's nothing like Silvestri, Dom Longbuco, Keith Munt. These are guys that I get to call peers because I worked with them in the regional level, super regional level. They're incredible. They should be working professional baseball. That's what's in front of you. That's what's in this region. That's what's in South Dakota, Iowa, not Iowa, in Minnesota. No, we do have some killer umpires in Iowa. We really do. Aaron Christians is down there. I believe. I don't know where the hell he lives. Alan Steckel, who's putting on these clinics every Wednesday. You guys have. There's never been a better time. It probably will get better, but there's never been a better time to learn and grab stuff. And the comment that's right here that I got to talk about: if three umpires are on the field, if it's me and Silvestri and a guy that we've never worked with before, and he's fairly new to college baseball, when we get together, it might have been Chris's call, and I might be the one that's got information for him. But the least experienced umpire is going to talk first. Why? The last thing we want is for that guy to come in knowing a rule, fairly sure he just read that section, just saw a video, just looked at ump app and saw something, and he swallows it because Silvestri intimidates him or Adkins is an asshole. There's some other thing. Were we recording this one? Damn it. Anyway.
It's fine.
It's always fine. I get to do what I want. I'm your mentor, you punk. Anyway.
Facts are okay here. Facts are okay here, Dan.
It is a real and immovable hurdle for the young umpire to not want to speak, but he might save the crew. She might be the one that gets us forward because there's something we didn't realize or there's something we forgot. A lot of times when you get a call, you stomp on an interference, you know full well what you're going to do with the batter, but you didn't think about where the runners are. And placing runners is our significant challenge, right? It's always a bit of a challenge. Sometimes you can grab it, you can stomp it, you can point it out real early. But if you get it wrong as you're getting together, that young umpire can help you. Hey, I don't think that runner gets third. I think that runner's got to go back to second. So the least experienced umpire talks first, then the calling umpire, then the umpire that might have some information. If it's just two of you, do the same mechanic. If it's four, you absolutely need to do this. The first time I ever saw Billy Van Rapport, one of my favorite umpires, he had to overturn Steve Mattingly at second base. That is literally like a human going out and telling Apollo, nah, you got this wrong. You got to change where the chariot's going. And he did it. He did it in the World Series. And right now he's probably right at the top of the pile because he's willing to do that. He was the reason that he was on the clinic video for a reason. He's that good. But more importantly, he's that open to what information comes in. You have to be that kind of umpire. The old school stuff, when Chad and I were young and coming up, and we're far from young, they used to talk about, hold them off. You don't have to listen to that. You can be unapproachable. It's dead. It's gone. So we're going to be those kind of guys. When you're mentoring, you want to exhibit the kind of behavior. And the first thing you can do is lift that young umpire up. And Jake just sent me a message and asked me if I have and I will send it to you, Jake. I'm still working on pregame manuals for all sets 2, 3, and 4. But the 2-man manual, I send it to every young umpire that I've never worked with before I get out to the game. And I always send a message saying, don't be intimidated by this. These are some talking points. The truth is, I want them to dive into it. I want them to eat it. I want them to be able to defecate it. The point being, it's going to go over a lot of the stuff before we get to the field. I'm going to reiterate those issues. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to carry each other. He probably will teach me something. I told Jake, and I did in the clinic when I worked at the U for cage work on Friday, and I use a caught foul tip. That's what I do. I stole that from a guy that had never worked baseball before. It was his second game ever. Kid didn't know what he was doing. But that was what he decided it looked like when the ball was caught. It's mine now. I'll steal from everybody. I don't give a damn. I'll steal from all of y'all. But so the point is, have energy, be open, be approachable. understand where the nervousness comes in and fight that. Lift that person up, because that person is going to take your spot, God willing. Everything going the right way, everything lining up. We want it to be that way. Jake, is there anything else you want me to cover?
No, you're good, man. Appreciate it. That you nailed exactly what I was talking about. And the kind of to what Dan was saying, I don't remember. I've worked thousands of games in my career. I don't remember a lot of games that I've worked just because I've worked a lot of them. But I will tell you, I remember the partners. I remember the partners that I stepped on the field with where it's like, I really don't want to step foot on the field with them again and it's always a personality thing. But I mean, the list of people that I will step on the field with any day of the week is 100 times longer than the list of people I won't step on the field with. But attitude is a big thing. Both as a mentor and a mentee, we're not, mentors. We're not bigger than the game. We're here to help. We're here to lift umpires up, as Dan was saying. We're here to make umpires better. We talked about quality feedback, and for the next time we do this, I'm gonna put quality relevant feedback. Don't nitpick the small stuff. Okay, so a couple years ago, this is I think the perfect example. A couple years ago, the way that the plate umpire would approach the slot kind of changed a little bit, and so we're always putting our slot foot in first. Okay, that's something that I try to do, but I'll be honest, I'm not 100%, doing it that way. But I will tell you, I'm in the same spot in the slot every single time. My head's in the same spot on every single pitch. That's what matters. How I get into the slot, to some people, yeah, it matters. But I'm far more concerned. Are you in the same spot? Is your nose on the inside corner of the plate, belt buckle, or whatever point of reference you use? Is your head height in the same spot? That's the big stuff. And then don't feedback dump. I come from high level hockey where I've walked into a locker room after a game and you're drinking through a fire hose about how crappy you were. Those suck. And I realize it's high level hockey, but if you get off the field working with a guy that you just did a 14U game or something like that, give him 2 or 3 things at most. And give it to him in a way that's digestible. Don't bury somebody. You wouldn't bury a partner on the field. Don't bury him off the field. Connor, did I miss anything?
I put a quote in the chat. I'm not sure anybody read it, but when you're working with younger umpires, you're working with lesser experienced umpires, ask yourself the question before you talk. Are you giving this information to help someone succeed or to prove how much you know? And I think that I found a lot of quotes that I don't know who to attribute them to. I think I screenshotted this from a Facebook officiating group I'm a part of. One of the few gems I've found in my time in those. But take a book and a notepad with you when you're on the field and write down notes so you remember the big things and remember what they are. When I work with somebody that really is interested in really getting better, I will typically take something out and I'll write stuff down between innings. And I may tell them 2 things to work on after the game. And I may email them a litany of stuff that they wanted. But I don't want to sit there and I want to have a bunch of stuff that I can pick and choose from and see what matters in that game. What may have happened in the 3rd inning may not be worth talking about anymore. It may have corrected itself or something worse may have happened. And now all I've got is these 2 things to talk about because that's all I can remember. Write notes down. I do it in college games, but I think the biggest thing is give them enough information to make them want to come back. because you can sit there and you can break down everything they're doing wrong as a young umpire. That doesn't help them. That doesn't make them have fun. It doesn't make them want to come back. And this really, mentorship is about giving them tools to succeed and get them back the next day and back the next day and back the next day, and building this repetitive cycle of encouragement to get them to continue with this, because you can't get better if you stop after game one. And we don't want to force people out because we are overly negative or overly critical. They're going to hear what they're doing wrong from every fan in the ballpark. They don't need to hear what they're doing wrong from you. Give them that constructive piece that's going to make them better, to make them hear less from everybody else.
Well said as always. Post game, I've already kind of alluded to this. I love that Connor has the scratch paper in the bag. It's almost like he, looked through the PowerPoint, when I sent it to him yesterday.
No, I just worked with you enough. I know I'm going to need a few pins.
That's fair. I say, I know you're a 2-pen guy when you're working with me, and it's not to record mound visits. One trick that I learned early on is have some scratch paper in your bag, and not for the reason that Connor said. I carry a small book in my bag, and if during a post game or something like that, Connor says, "Hey, you're doing this." Okay. One, who am I to argue? Because I know I've worked enough with Connor. If Connor's telling me something, it's the gospel. Like it's enough for him to say it. So I write that down in my book. And I take a look at that book every once in a while throughout the season, just to make sure that I'm keeping myself sharp. That's why I put have scratch paper in your bag. For me during the summer, my scratch paper that I take onto the field with me is simply just use game cards. Because that's just for some reason I have some problem throwing away game cards from the spring. Um, Bars and cars, I love. Oh, okay, Connor,
No.
you have a grin on your face. Do you want to chime in here?
I wasn't the one that told you this. The umpire in the field, right? And we start umpiring because we're looking at rule books and mechanics manuals. But you learn the art of umpiring in bars and cars. Your post-game trips, discussions with partners, discussions with other umpires, where you really learn how to umpire the game of baseball. And I feel like that phrase goes so far beyond the game of baseball into life, that it's so applicable to everything you do. I can't tell you the last time somebody talked to me about a rule that I missed um, in a baseball game, or I made a mistake of. But I can tell you about the situation that I handled, that somebody taught me how to handle better, or a discussion with a coach that I could have done a better job with, or how to, not necessarily a mechanic, but a signal on something that happens that's odd, right? An atypical situation. What looks better? How do you do this? What perspective do you have? Right? Everything about umpiring is an art, not a science. The rule book, the mechanics manual is the science, right? It's the science behind umpiring. What John Thayer can get away with, I can't always get away with, right? What Chad Ishins might be able to tell a coach, I can't tell a coach. A signal or mechanic or way to explain a call on the field through visual interpretation, I'm going to be different than Jake is. I don't have to. Like, there was a time in my life where I barked at coaches a lot. I've learned tips and tricks, and I shared one with the clinic. There are times where I'm hearing from a dugout, and I just pull my lineup card out, look at it, tap it on my chest protector a couple times, take a peek at the dugout, and they get the hint. That works for me. They know that they're on the verge of this is like not this is not the hey, this is your warning. This is a hey, you're getting close. And sometimes that's enough to keep the heat at bay for a couple innings, couple pitches. You know, it's how to handle those situations. There are a million rulebook umpires out there, but if they don't know how to handle people, they don't last very long at high levels of baseball. And it's a people game. It's a people profession. You have to be able to relate to the people that you're working with, to the people that make the decisions, to the people that you're working for, and get them to understand what your message is and what you're trying to relay. I can't. I I'm a terrible baseball science person. Okay, I'm not going to quote the rule book at you directly. There are times where I have to, and I can do that. But there are a lot of times where I just explain it to you in baseball terms because you're dealing with baseball coaches who don't typically read the rule book. They rely on their rules knowledge created by their playing days and something somebody told them one time when they were looking at a play online or looking at a play on VHS for some of these coaches. You have to be able to speak their language. And that's the bars and cars part of this job or this profession or this avocation that separates you from the next person. And if you want to get really good at umpiring, that's where you learn the art. And that's how you learn how to impress coaches and assigners and players and other umpires. Knowing the rules is expected. And it's what it is, especially the higher you go. It's not a, hey, it'd be really nice if you learn the rules. It's a, if you don't know the rules, you don't work. And what separates you and what gets you postseason assignments and what gets you state tournaments and regionals and super regionals and World Series, it's all the stuff that is an art that you have to develop that fits your personality. Um, I'm a big dude. It doesn't take much for people to notice me. I'm loud. I'm outspoken. Um, I know when I need to be loud and outspoken. I know when I need to just a quiet word will do the trick. And part of that is trying stuff and failing. The amount of stories I could tell you from my first 10 years umpiring, I did a lot of stuff I probably shouldn't have done that you don't get away with today. And I haven't done since because I learned that either A, it worked and it shouldn't have worked, or it doesn't work now at the level I'm at, or it didn't work and I got to find a different way to do that. But you have to umpire to your personality and develop yourself based on your skill set. Jake's tall and skinny. He doesn't need to be big and boisterous with the signals, right? He needs to be strong because he still hasn't learned how to do bicep curls, which is the first thing I ever told him. But you have a really good umpire. I'm on a couple series with this spring. Very small. Like, I mean, he's short, he's thin, he runs well, he looks well, but he has to be big with all of his signals and mechanics because he doesn't just pop out in your field of vision all the time. You have to umpire to your skill set and know when you need to turn it on or turn it up and when you need to turn it down. And that's the bars and cars part that you learn from other people and you learn from every person you umpire with by talking through situations. Yes, telling the war stories, one-upping each other. There is an extent of that. Um, but you really have to rely on other people to see the outside perspective of you and see how you're perceived and see reactions to yourself and how you handle a situation and how coaches and players respond to you to develop that. And you don't develop that by reading the rule book. You don't develop that by looking at the mechanics manual. And that's like knowing those two things are important. They are the core of what we do, but that's not the separator. That's not the it factor. And
Connor,
that's where you learn the it factor.
I'm gonna chime in here. I want to wrap this up, and then I kind of want to circle back because what Chris put in the chat here is fantastic. But I realize that we're running up on the 1 o'clock time. So Chris, I want you to we'll talk about this absolutely because what you just said is absolutely critical. And Chad, if you have anything too that you'd like to add, we absolutely love that as well. But in case you got to go, the closing point here is follow up the next day and throughout the season and off season. I mean, I talk to my mentees, at least twice a month during the off season, and it's once a month during the season. Let them know you care and that type of stuff. If you guys got to leave, that's totally fine. We're going to talk about a really cool point that Chris just made in the chat, and we'll keep recording. So I'll try to get this up online here as soon as possible today. So if you got to leave, that's totally fine. But Chris, why don't you let's do this part because this is good. This is good.
All right, sorry to steal your thunder, Connor. Like the first time I met Connor, we were at that complex game, weren't we, with Aaron? And it was just like good to meet you, all the usual stuff, like, hey, how you doing? And something I didn't put in there. I will ask each guy like where they want to get to. I don't know if this isn't talked about either, where they want to get to in their careers, so that I can tailor my critiques to that level. If they just want to stay where they are, I'm going to give them things like, this is how your mechanic looked, this is how your timing was, yada, yada. But going on to what I wrote down, remember that the mentees that you just have are learning the basics. And like what Jacob was saying about getting into the slot, you could have forgotten how to do that. They could say, you don't look like you're in the slot. Take that advice. If the game's on video, look at your video, look it over, see if they are right or not. Like, remember, they are a wealth of information as well, not just what you have in your brain. Because you probably developed bad habits. I know I have. So do that as well. And then this goes to the teaching aspect. Connor can probably speak to this as well. As teachers, you want to learn, create that development of why you're doing certain things, not just because the manual says to do it, not just because the rule book says to do it. What's the reason behind it? Creates more connections in the brain, and you can remember it better that way. It's essential that you teach your mentees, we do it this way because the runner's going into second base and we want you to be here for the best angle because angle over distance, whatever you want to use it as. And then the third part was that, just like I said with Connor, we had a lazy game. We didn't do anything in that. It was a 3-man game too with Aaron, but we still post game some stuff. Like Connor was behind the plate. We talked about his timing, and I might have said his head height looked a little bit too far up if you want to try to get down next time, anything like that. To have something, I hate when I go to games, and especially with these higher level guys and 4-man crews that are Big 10, Big 12 guys, stuff like that. And they go, no, we don't got anything for you guys. Like, I know I messed up a rotation as you too. I know I missed something. Why aren't you telling me that? Have something. Like, that just infuriates me, but I'm good. Thanks, Jacob.
No, absolutely no. And that's a fantastic point. That is also one of my biggest pet peeves. I mean, if anybody knows me, I hate the 2 words dead ball. It just, that is just one thing for me that just bugs me, is when people go, there's a hit by pitch, oh, dead ball. I hate that time. But an even bigger pet peeve of mine is I walk off the field, and this fortunately does not happen as much at the college level, but it happens all the time in summer baseball. You get done, take your stuff off, you throw it in your car, and you turn on the car and you go. That just drives me nuts, because you're robbing yourself, you're robbing your partner of an opportunity to ask questions, to get better. And I've had people that, they'll be like, you work in this conference. Yeah, I do. And you're asking me for feedback. I did the same thing with AC when I broke into college baseball, because, we got off the field and he's like, yeah, this is what I got for you. I said, okay. He's like, what do you got for me? And I'm like, I know what levels of baseball you're asking me. So it's weird, but the way that it's turned it out for me is when people ask me questions, it's like, I didn't realize I was doing that. And it's like, yeah, you don't, that's a bad habit I picked up somewhere. And that's, I appreciate you asking about it. I appreciate you telling me that I'm doing it. And so it's a good way to get some feedback too. Like, ask questions. It's the best way to get better because there are certain people that I know where they want to go, and I will just volunteer the information, and a lot of information too, for that matter. When it pertains to a newer umpire or someone that I haven't really worked with, I might give them a thing or two. But then if they start asking questions, that just opens up the possibilities for what we can sit and talk about.
And if
Quick
you are in
story.
a situation, oh, sorry, if you are in a situation where you're working with somebody who has more experience than you, and they ask you what you have for them, ask them why they do certain things they do that you notice. It's an opportunity for you to get information that makes you better that they may not have for you because you're not working the same position. When this ball happened, I noticed you went here. Why did you do that? Because you're going to learn from people, and it's going to it challenges the way I think about something because I've been doing stuff for so long, it's habit. I do it automatically and I don't even think about it. And that person may not know they need to do that because I didn't tell them or nobody else told them because it's just something we expect them to know, right? Common sense. And nobody educates us on that. It's not common sense. Go ahead, Chris.
I'm gonna go ahead, Chris.
Just really quickly about the dead ball thing. In umpire school, if somebody called dead ball instead of time, we would stop the field we're on. Everyone would take off their hats, put it over their hearts, and that person would have to say eulogy to that ball. So it's something stupid, yes, but you'll always remember that you do not say dead ball.
I've two things. One on the dead ball. I have heard, and this could totally be umpire folklore, but I have heard of outfields being dug up and full on funerals being performed for baseballs. I've never been to a camp where that's happened, but I've heard allegedly that it's happened. And yeah. And Connor, I'm going to steal your favorite quote because you missed your opportunity to say it. Okay. You don't know what you don't know. So ask. I'm not going to sit and be like, oh, you're an idiot because you asked this question. Because as Connor says all the time, you don't know what you don't know. Anything else? All right, everybody. Thanks for joining. I'll keep it on afterwards if we want to chat for a few minutes. Otherwise, we will see you next week. Reminder, we are not, as of right now, planning on recording because we have a Major League umpire coming in to talk about situation handling.